Hey everyone, we're currently in Vieques, a small island off Puerto Rico's eastern coast, and I wanted to show you some of the animals that we've been fortunate enough to see in the waters around here. And this bay that we have in front of us is surrounded by coral reefs, so it's an excellent diving spot. We're also going to check out the reefs around that small island that you see in the distance. So without further ado, let me go ahead and show you what we found. This is a shallow reef that we found a few feet from the shore, so these are very shallow waters. Here we have quite a few species of fish, so we have some tomtates and grunts, as well as a yellowtail parrotfish and a blue tang. These fish species are very common in the Caribbean and they mainly live in shallow reefs like this one, though you can find them pretty much everywhere. This is a juvenile French angelfish that we found swimming around. Adults have a much different coloration and they do tend to inhabit deeper waters. So it's more common to see juveniles in shallower reefs. And French angelfish are very curious fish, so they will swim up to you if you see them. We are now a little bit further from the shore, and in the outskirts of the reef we were at before, so this is almost in the middle of the bay. And you can see there's a school of yellow goatfish here. Goatfish actually have a pair of whiskers that they use to search for food in the sand, so it's very common to see them in sandy bottoms like this one. The black fish that you're seeing swimming around are a type of damselfish. They're commonly known as Beaugregories. These are all adults, and you can tell by their color, they're mostly black, while juveniles tend to be mostly yellow and blue. These fish can be approached as they're very curious, though they do constantly move. And unfortunately, this part of the coral reef that we're in right now is mostly dead. You can see most of the coral here are completely covered in algae and they're very dull in color, which is indicative of them being dead. And this was a little bit sad to see. Corals are very sensitive to water conditions, so changes in temperature and nutrient concentration can be fatal to them. We're now exploring a little ravine that we found in the middle of this reef. Here we have another Beaugregory damselfish. Probably came up to see what we were doing. And here we have a brain coral. They're pretty common to see in reefs here, and they can get huge. This is only a small one. And we're currently in a much deeper area of the bay, so that's why it's a little bit darker. Here we have a school of different species of fish swimming in this ravine. We've got quite a few blue tangs swimming around, and some French grunts, as well as a porkfish and a couple of damsels. And most of these smaller fish species use these rock formations to avoid predators, such as barracudas and groupers. And so you do tend to find lots of fish in places like this. We're now back in a shallower part of the reef, and as you can see there's a ton of French grunts here. That smaller fish that just swam by is a porkfish. On the sand you can see a pair of spiny lobster antennae. They're either from a shed or maybe a lobster that was eaten here. We did see lots of Caribbean spiny lobsters in this area. Here's a couple of pictures of one that we found. We are now in a different reef that's on the edge of the bay. And all these rock formations that you can see here are mostly made out of dead coral. So that's why they're so irregular in shape and have so many crevices and little holes. After a while, algae starts colonizing the surface of these old corals. And that's what you can see has happened here. You can see there's a couple of fish hiding under the overhangs of the reef. They're mostly glasseye snappers and soldierfish. And we also have a porcupinefish hiding over there. Now we're diving around that smaller island that you saw at the beginning of the video. Let's go ahead and see what we can find here. Here we have a glasseye snapper, and glasseye snappers are not actually snappers. They're a member of the big eye family of fishes, and they're also mostly nocturnal, so that's why they have such large eyes. We're now in a much shallower part of the reef, and we did have to be very careful not to touch anything here, as there was a ton of fire coral, which stings just like jellyfish, and it can hurt quite a bit if you do end up touching it. Here we've got a school of sergeant major damselfish, as well as some wrasse. And that's another glasseye snapper that was swimming right next to us. Here's the island shore above the waterline, so you can see where we're at. So that fish that's swimming in the distance is actually a great barracuda. It's one of the most aggressive fish that we have here in the Caribbean. Here we have a glasseye snapper and a porcupinefish that we found under a rock ledge. There are 5 species of porcupinefish here in the Caribbean. This is a spotted porcupinefish. And it can inflate itself just like a pufferfish if it feels it's in danger. They're nocturnal and they mostly hide in caves and ledges during the day, like this one was doing. This is a Caribbean bluehead wrasse that we have in front of us. It's a species of cleaner wrasse, and so it mostly feeds on parasites of other fish. And that was a long-spined squirrelfish that just went under that rock. And And here we have some more footage of the glass-eye snapper and the porcupinefish from before. So this is pretty interesting. I don't quite know why, but there were a ton of fish gathered here. This was a little bit further from the shore and right next to the seagrass bed. We've got sergeant majors and some wrasse swimming around, as well as a couple of butterfly fish. And you can see most of the fish species that we have swimming around here are pretty small in size. So they were probably foraging as they were all gathered around the coral fragments that are on the seabed. You can see there's also quite a few long-spined sea urchins here. And we actually found a couple of red cushion starfish on the seagrass bed around here. Here's a picture of one. And here we have a pair of juvenile Beaugregorys. We are now just outside of the bay area and in the open sea. The corals here are much larger than the ones in the bay, though they are more isolated. And the currents were quite strong here. Here we have some gorgonias. They're a type of coral commonly known as sea fans. They're actually a soft species of coral, so they can move back and forth with the current. And they can vary in color, though the ones I've seen here are mostly purple and orange. We also have a few Caribbean sea whips here, which are also a species of soft coral. You can see some pretty big brain corals in the distance. We also have some yellowtail snappers swimming around, and a parrotfish under that rock. And we're gonna wrap up. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. Thanks for watching.